All right, we will say good day to you all this day of your time. We will begin this transmission titled The Voices in Your Head in the following way. Through the auspices of myself, who is the voice in the channel's head. We will be talking about different levels of this idea, although there are two main sections, the physical and the non-physical, that are translated as voices in the head, as ideas, as inspirations, as messages, telepathic, vibrational, intuitional, and so forth. Let us begin in the physical realm with the understanding that with each level that we will be discussing, from which you can experience the idea of communication in your mind, there will always be the potential for any communication to be filtered through either the negative, the neutral, or the positive aspects of your personality structure. Beginning with that idea, let us examine the most common voices that occur in your head on a daily basis, generally speaking. You have within your personality structure reflections of things that sound like information, that sound like voices in a sense. But in the center there is what might just be referred to as the neutral observer. This is representative of the daily thoughts you may have, the observations you may have, the neutral recognitions that you may have going about your life, such as, oh, look, there is a person over there. Oh, I think I will walk that way. Oh, there is a person approaching me. Oh, yes, I remember I have to do this thing today. Just the idea of the neutral observer in the center that is kind of recording the comings and goings of your activities, the recognition of your navigation in the physical reality dream. However, bracketing the neutral observer position of the voice in your head are the negative and positive sides. The negative side of the voice in your head that exists on this physical vibrational level is also fragmented into two parts, two components, as well as the positive side being sectioned into two vibrations. Ostensibly, we will refer to these two vibrations on the negative side and the two vibrations on the positive side, bracketing the neutral observer as male and female components, masculine and feminine aspects. On the negative side, you would find the masculine aspect would be most often referred to as the critic. That voice you hear that tells you, oh, you're not doing good enough. That judges you. That says you're not worthy, you're not living up to your potential. That you're not doing something correctly. That you're doing it wrong. And all the other kinds of voices that you hear, the stories that you tell yourself that are critical of your nature, critical of your being. Now, there are many ways that this idea, this critical voice in your head, is translated and interpreted in different cultures on your planet. But we understand that to the general population we are addressing right now, in your particular nation state, the majority of the mythologies and stories that exist stem from what you term the Judeo-Christian background, and therefore, in using the stories that come from that background as an example of how this critical voice is often seen, we will refer to some of your ancient biblical references. So this critical voice has been referred to symbolically as the father of lies, because all of these judgments, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're doing something wrong, in the judgmental sense, are all really fundamentally lies about your nature, your true worth, your value in existence. In recognizing that critical voice in ancient times, but because your physical reality, especially in ancient times, tended to be looked at by your population as something outside of you, something separate from you that you existed in, then this idea of the critical voice was also projected into an idea, an archetypal idea outside of yourself, because many people in ancient times simply didn't understand that it issued from a portion of their own consciousness, a portion of their own psyche, their own physical mind. And thus, when these kinds of critical judgments came from within, when they heard these voices in their heads, they simply followed suit in assuming that everything happens outside, that physical reality is really outside of you. And so they assigned this critical voice to the idea of demons, negative spirits, the devil, and essentially summed it all up in the archetypal symbol of the father of lies. So please understand that when you hear this critical voice, in a sense it is actually lying to you about yourself and giving you an opportunity to align with a vibration that is really out of phase with your true self. The feminine side of this voice in the negative vibration is called the seducer, the deceiver, and is often depicted by the idea of a siren that lures you onto the rocky shoals to crash, and biblically has been represented as the polar feminine opposite, so to speak, or partner, if you will, counterpart, if you will, to the father of lies, and has been referred to in your ancient texts as the whore of Babylon. That's why those phrases exist in your biblical texts. And this is what they actually refer to, are these archetypal energies within your own physical mind that represent the critic and the deceiver. The deceiver, its specific negative belief talent is to lure you, to deceive you into the idea of doing something that is out of integrity, out of alignment, but justifying and convincing you that it is actually the better path. The deceiver goes by the idea that the end justifies the means, and that it's all right to cut corners, it's all right to cheat others, it's all right to take what is not yours, because of some end result that is supposedly going to erase all the misalignment that was utilized in the actual means toward that end. And so it lures you down the path of saying, oh, it's all right, just take this shortcut here, nobody will care, you're doing good work, it'll all come out okay. It seems to say that this is the easiest way to go, but its deceptive quality is actually disguising the fact and allowing you to be in denial about the fact that because it's out of alignment with your true frequency, it's actually going to be the most difficult possible path you could take. And that things will always rebound upon you of like vibration, because remember, these belief systems are self-reinforcing and will also be reflected back by the higher mind mirror, and will always be amplified according to the energy that you are choosing to buy into. The deceiver, the justifier in this sense, on the negative side, is also responsible for the recognition in your society that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because again, good intentions are not enough if you are not aligned in your methodology in how you arrive at the result of the choices that you make. So, pay attention to the idea that many of the voices you hear on the negative side that stem from certain belief systems within your physical mind come from that aspect of your psyche that has been symbolically labeled the critic and the deceiver. And allow yourself to recognize when they are attempting to tempt you into a vibrational misalignment with your true self. Go back into the neutral voice, the neutral observer, so that you can allow yourself the opportunity to shift these vibrations in your physical mind to the positive side. And on the positive side, again with the masculine and feminine energy, is the representation of the positive parents, the supportive father, the nurturing mother, the loving parents that guide you and allow you to grow and mature in alignment with your joy, your truth, your excitement, your passion, your creativity, your unconditional love of self and all that is. And that's when you know, when you allow yourself to let the positive side of these voices shine through, come through. You hear, you feel the pat on the back, the job well done, the support system that is reflected in the synchronicity in your life from the positive parents, the loving parents, the supportive father, and the nurturing mother, that now can allow you to become fully an adult in alignment with your true core spirit being. And that's the first layer and level of the voices in your head that are connected most strongly to the vibration of your experience in physical reality that are expressions of your physical mind, your psyche. Reflections that are built in to guide you so that you can always allow yourself to remain, for the most part, dead center in the neutral observer without necessarily believing that you need to be tempted into the misalignment of the negative side of the critic and the deceiver, but allows you the opportunity to choose to really only receive those messages, those inputs, those voices that are representative and reflective of the supportive father and the nurturing mother, the loving parents, and grow in their image into a mature adult in that vibration, in that balanced state of being. Now, we are going to also talk about other levels that you're going to experience connections to, and the levels that we are about to describe, in some senses, are representative of degrees of relevance, degrees of expansion of energy and consciousness, but just because we are going to give them to you in a certain order, up the ladder, up the scale of expansiveness and vibrational resonance, doesn't mean that you will necessarily experience them in your life in exactly this order. You may skip over a couple and connect to something on a different level because that's what you need to connect to. Because what we are talking about here in the two different sections of the physical and the non-physical are not only the ideas of the voices, the interpretive voices that you create in your physical mind, but also the way in which you actually receive communication from non-physical beings, non-physical levels of your own consciousness, with respect not only to the idea of self-guidance, but also with respect to the idea of connecting to other levels in a kind of a channeling state. So we're also talking here about that when people feel that they are attracted to and drawn to the idea of opening up to being in a channeling state and connecting to other levels of consciousness, we are giving you an understanding of the typical degree, the typical arrangement, the typical order in which you may experience connecting to other levels of consciousness that are common for many of you who are willing to open up to that channeling state. Again, it doesn't mean it has to happen in this order or exactly in this way. But what we are describing is the average, typical way most of you will experience connecting to different levels of consciousness, be it within yourself or what appears to be outside yourself, if you open up to the idea of being more of yourself and existing in the channeling state. So, we have described the idea first of this first step, this foundation of the neutral observer in the physical reality, with the negative side of the critic and the deceiver, and the positive side of the supportive father and the nurturing mother. And now we go up to the next expansive level. This is where you start tapping into the idea of your own intuition, which is an understanding of how you pick up on vibrations of things around you, people around you, beings around you of different types. They don't have to be human. But the intuition also has its own voice. It has its own feeling. It has its own sensation. It's a different kind of a voice in your head, in your heart. And remember, through all this, we're not leaving the heart out. This is a balancing act between the mind and the heart in every case that we're describing, positive or negative. But the intuition is another level of the voice in your head where you sense things, you pick up on vibrations and interpret them, again, either through the negative or the positive filter, according to what you're buying into, but interpret those vibrations in ways that feels a little bit different than the typical voices that you talk to yourself with in your own head. Because it seems to be coming a little bit more from another level, another realm, a little bit more picking up on quote-unquote outside vibrations and interpreting them for yourself, to use them as guideposts for yourself, to understand how to relate to the reality around you, how to guide yourself through that ocean, that sea of vibrational emanations, vibrational information. And again, fine-tuning it so that it is always in balance in that neutral observer space in the center, which runs all the way up and down these levels that we're talking about, positive, negative, and neutral. These levels can be experienced through these filters on all levels. The idea, therefore, is to stay balanced with the idea of intuition and pay attention and have the discernment vibrationally within yourself to know the difference between the idea of what you're picking up on just as a neutral vibration and what you may be coloring or interpreting or spinning, as you say, into or through the negative or positive filters within your own physical mind. Because just to pick up on a vibration doesn't necessarily mean that you are remaining neutral with your response or reaction to that vibration, because it's still, as with everything, an opportunity to put positive meaning or negative meaning into what you are sensing. But you are sensing on a different level in what we call the intuitive vibrational level. That's another level that translates into a kind of sensing or voice in your head and in your heart. Above that, the next level is what we will call the archetypal compartment level. Now, what this means is, because your physical mind has been compartmentalized in a variety of ways, you have different kinds of personality aspects of your total being, your total physical mind, all existing kind of either overlapping, if you wish, or side by side, if you wish. Doesn't matter how you look at this. But you have these different archetypal expressions of your physical consciousness. And each and every one of them, and there are 22 of them, can actually sound and feel like an autonomous being that suddenly you have gotten in touch with. Many times, again, not always, but many times when individuals on your planet start opening up to the idea of channeling, be it vocal channeling or automatic writing or however you wish to express it, but with the component that you're connecting to something else, someone else, usually, not always, usually, the first level you actually come in contact with is this archetypal level within your own personality structure. You think you may be talking to someone else outside your personality on another dimensional plane, but very often you're not. The first beings you usually encounter are these archetypal reflections that comprise your total physical personality. These 22 archetypal reflections were intuitively recognized by various individuals through time and incorporated into what you call the major arcana of the tarot card deck. So if you want to understand what the qualities, what the energies, what the vibrations of these 22 archetypal compartmentalized components of your psyche are, look at the major 22 cards of the tarot deck, and you will understand exactly how they all relate to how you view yourself at given times, what kind of energies you feel within yourself, what kind of role you play at different times in various situations, what kind of stories and relationships you have with your psyche, within yourself at various times, in various situations, and again, in conjunction with and according to whatever you hold on to as a belief, because you can experience every single one of these 22 major arcana, 22 compartmentalized archetypes in, again, either a neutral, negative, or positive way. So allow yourself to investigate those major cards within the tarot deck to understand all of the components on the archetypal level of your physical mind. Now, as you then explore another vibration above that, you now go into the idea of the higher mind. And this is where the conduit of your imagination comes in, because imagination is the conduit, is the pipeline of communication between the higher mind and the physical mind. And therefore, the voice you're most likely to experience from the higher mind is actually the experience of your imagination itself. The daydreams, the images, the feelings that come from your imagination. This can include the idea of the nighttime dreams as well, because very often what you wake up and remember as a dream, which is again another kind of voice, another kind of message delivery system, may simply be your physical mind's interpretation of a communication that you were having as a more holistic person when you were more fully in touch, more fully awake in and as your higher mind self. And so when you wake up in the morning, your physical mind will use that pipeline of your imagination to reconnect, to stay connected to the conversation, to the communication, to the information coming from your higher mind, and it will interpret this in the way that you understand as images and feelings and experiences and memories you call the dream. So the higher mind has many ways of communicating, not only, of course, in the concept we are discussing already, and even down through the idea of the archetypes and down through the intuition and into the physical experience, but also through the synchronicity in your life, which is another kind of signal or sign or roadmap or voice in your head. Because higher mind will usually simply guide you very, very gently to see what is already in front of your face in physical reality. Because the higher mind mirror is another way of reflecting information and ideas that are important for you to be aware of, and it will use the synchronicity of what's already existing in your reality to do so, and that's another form of communication, it's another form of voice. So when you see synchronicity, when you experience synchronicity, you're actually experiencing another voice from the higher mind, reflecting to you what you need to know to stay in alignment with the path that you chose to experience, the path you chose to be, the path you uniquely are. Above and beyond that, again, you will find that those that are open to it will begin perhaps to connect to the idea you call spirit guides, or those that exist in what you call the non-physical realm of spirit, those that exist on the other side, as you say. And this can begin the sojourn into channeling and mediumistic capabilities, and you start hearing those voices in your head, the voices of the guides, the intuition that comes with that, the imagination that comes with that. It's not always experienced as a literal voice, although it can be. But that's now the level you're tapping into when you're at the level of the vibration of the guides and the spirits in the spirit realm. And that can boost and amplify and magnify the so-called transmissions and voices that you receive, that you perceive from that realm, and may translate as voices in your head that can impart information to you that can be of great benefit both to you and to anyone else to whom those messages, to whom that information may be important. Now, above the guides level, comes what you would call the soul level. And this is your individual soul. That is the one that is your spirit, that is your unique experience of your life, and that, in a sense, determined what guides, what soul family you'd be interacting with for this life, what spirits would be assisting you on your journey. And on this soul level, you may again bring through what you may think to be literally a different entity, but not entirely is it so. It is still part and parcel of your own greater being, and it is that which determines the theme you chose to explore. And so the soul will deliver information and messages and voices and guidance relevant for that theme, relevant for the challenges that you experience in life, because the challenges that you experience in life, the greatest challenges, are the voices of the theme, are the voices that bring your attention to the theme that you chose to explore, to discover yourself from a new point of view. So the challenges that you experience are another form of voices in your head that put you in touch with your soul level, as well as your guides, as well as spirits, as well as the idea of higher mind and intuition and archetypes, and all the way into the physical mind, positive, negative, and neutral. Above and beyond that, you can start to connect to the concept of what you call the extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional consciousnesses, such as myself, who also can be perceived, in a sense, as voices in the head through telepathic connection and communication and resonant vibration in the way that you are experiencing through the channel before you now. And therefore, that is another level, yet again, that connects to the large-scale ideas of your world, allows you to recognize information and reflection that turns your attention, turns your focus from the idea of your physical reality to the stars, to other dimensions, other experiences, other aspects of your being. And from there, you can also begin to recognize that it will remind you through the soul level of what you would call past lives and future lives that also can be tapped into and may appear to be individual voices in your head that you may draw upon because of your connections to all these coexisting simultaneous realities. And so there are those voices as well that can be tapped into. And again, I remind you, it doesn't have to happen in this order. Someone may simply jump straight from the idea of intuition all the way to the idea of receiving what appears to be a communication and a voice in the head from an extra-dimensional being, or from what you call a past life or a future life. You can skip over certain things if they are simply not relevant for you to perceive the voices, perceive the information in that way, for what it is you have to do. So again, this is not an exact map, but it is a reference to the different levels that exist that you are capable of tapping into that will provide a certain perspective and a certain way of receiving information and perceiving information that we are lumping into the euphemistic appellation voices in your head. Beyond this level now, beyond the extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional individuated level of beings that exist in other civilizations and individuated consciousnesses that experience themselves in that way in other dimensions, comes what you would call the oversoul level that you can also bring through and tap into, that may be experienced from a certain point of view as a multitude of simultaneously existing archetypal voices, because the oversoul level is representative of all the different extensions, what you call past, present, and future, that exist simultaneously from the oversoul point of view. Because you are an extension that exists now. A past life is still an extension that exists now. A future life is still an extension that exists now, and all extensions come from the same oversoul of which you are a part. But you can tap directly into the oversoul level and communicate and commune with the voice in your head that is representative of that multitude of perspectives. And this will more often than not be experienced in a very gestalt way, in a very telepathic way, as images and symbols that are holographic in nature, that contain a multitude of ideas and information simultaneously in very simple pictorial ways, or perhaps even richly complex ways, but still will be symbolically representative of a lot of different kinds of voices and information and experiences that you can tap into in a way that will be processable by your physical mind and expressible by your physical mind in physical reality in whatever way is relevant for the journey that you're taking and the reason why you may have tapped into that level. Above and beyond, again, the oversoul vibration is what you might call the multitude of oversouls, or what we will term the galactic consciousness. In tapping into the idea of the galactic consciousness, you really span the galaxies, the voids between the galaxies, and encompass a gigantic expression of all that is, that spans space and time in unprecedented ways, that includes within its makeup the idea of realities, universes, dimensions, galaxies. You can tap into this level as well. And this will more often than not be experienced as a voice in your head, again, not only visually, emotionally, vibrationally, telepathically, through images, tones, sounds, pictures, geometries, what have you. That's a different way of experiencing the voices, but also can be experienced literally as the depiction of a galaxy itself, or a super powerful star by itself, and each flicker and flame and blink of light in that galaxy or on the surface of that star can actually be another way of dispensing information to your physical mind. Again, in a very holographic way. You would look at that image and see the twinkling of the stars in the galaxy, or the prominences issuing from that star as actual tendrils of information reaching out to you, filling you with light. And now light itself becomes the voice in your head, and you start to learn the languages of light. And that can be experienced as well, and expressed as well in whatever way is relevant in your physical realm. Above this, we will simply say, to simplify, might be what you would call the angelic realm, the first reflection, the first split off from all that is. This is a very powerful archetypal realm that is the first mirror of God, the first step away, the first division from, the first reflection of the idea of God, Goddess, all that is, of Source. And to tap into the idea of the angelic realm allows you to experience a disorientation, an associative disassociation from the idea of separation, segregation. It gives you the language of compassion and all-encompassing energy, that which includes, that which contains, that which expresses itself through radiance, through frequency alone. And in that frequency, you will find another voice. You will find information that lures you, magnetizes you to the higher aspects of your being, that casts such a bright and brilliant light that it dispels all the shadows within you on the physical realm, and allows you to see clearly and hear clearly the clarion call of your signature frequency, that beacon that exists, that vibrates within your core being and calls you to align, to harmonize with all that is, which is the next and highest level up. Tapping directly into what you would call the God, Goddess energy, the all that is, and allowing yourself to simply express that unique voice, that unique feeling, that unique expression of compassion, of unconditional support, unconditional love, which in and of itself is a language, is a voice, the voice that clarifies, the voice that illuminates, the voice in which is absolute knowingness of who and what and when and where and how you are. And that voice can be brought through very clearly in a variety of ways, manifesting however it will, literally as a voice, as an intuition, as an archetype, as an angelic, as an ET, as an extra-dimensional, as a guide, as a spirit, however it wishes, however it needs. It is itself, the essence of the path of least resistance, and will always find a way. Will always urge you, pull you, magnetize you toward itself, which creates the idea of expansiveness. And yet it is also the idea of contraction. It is all things, and it is the very language of the Trinity, of the polarity and the balance point in the center. A whole other way of communicating in symbols and simple terms that are always representative of a triad, a trinity, a triune framework. That is the language, in a sense, the expression, as your mind can best interpret it, of all that is. And it can be expressed in a multitude of ways, for it is literally the multitude. And it is literally also the one, the all.